need to have outreach for families as well when something tragic like that happens.
Tonight, it's an emotional day for families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls as vigils are held across the country.
It raises the question of, as Indigenous people, should we continue to buy into the idea of Canada and working within that system, trying to make it better, or do we go our own way?
And Anishinaabe playwright Ian Ross questions the possibility of reconciliation in his new production. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Yesterday, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is asked whether his government would appeal a Human Rights Tribunal compensation order for on-reserve First Nations children wrongly apprehended by child welfare authorities. His answer was vague. However, today, his government launched a judicial review and wants the federal court to dismiss or set aside the tribunal's decision. The tribunal issued a monetary compensation order to the federal government a month ago, saying it willfully and recklessly discriminated against First Nations children and families caught up in the child welfare system. At $40,000 per person, the order could amount to billions of dollars. Cindy Blackstock called today's decision another sign the government is not accepting responsibility for its behavior.
I couldn't imagine, Todd, if a decision came against any organization I was with that we were willfully and recklessly discriminating against little kids in ways that contribute to their deaths and separations from families, that I wouldn't, first of all, feel horrified about what we have done, and then second of all, and more importantly, move heaven and earth to make sure it doesn't happen again. And yet we haven't seen any of that from the government.
Ms. Blackstock was speaking to Nation to Nation host Todd Lammer, and you can see more of that interview on the season premiere next Thursday. Vigils to honor missing or murdered Indigenous women and girls have been held across the country for years. It's an emotional time for the families. With the event being so close to a federal election, will that make a difference at polling stations? Here's Annette Francis with that story in Ottawa.
More missing, more murdered, more heartache. Just 4 months ago, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls released its final report, which included more than 200 calls for justice. According to Lori Ojic, the mother of Macy, who went missing 11 years ago, nothing has been acted on. She says supports are needed for families now.
You need to have outreach for families as well when something tragic like that happens. It doesn't cost that much money to train someone, you know, for frontline workers and know the process that the families have to go through.
Veldon Coburn has been coming to these vigils for the past 4 years, since the death of his daughter's biological mother. With the federal election just around the bend, he says the implementation of all the inquiries, calls to action, is a top priority.
I think with the lack of response to the ongoing crisis and genocide of Indigenous people, especially ongoing murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people, is that there won't be any reconciliation with that. You can't go around to photo ops while genocide continues to carry out unabated without any substantive policy response to it.
Results of the APTN Environics poll suggest 3/4 of Indigenous people surveyed say truth and reconciliation issues will be very or extremely important when deciding their vote. 75% say murdered or missing Indigenous women and girls is very important. APTN asked each of the federal parties what they're promising in terms of implementing the inquiry's calls for justice. The NDP and the Green parties promised to implement calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as recommendations from the National Inquiry. There was no response from the Conservative Party or the People's Party of Canada. The Liberals say they're committed to the inquiry's call for justice and that a national action plan is currently underway. Elder Claudette Commandis says that's something she'll be watching for.
They have to implement the recommendations from the inquiry report. first and foremost, and that has to be a priority, period. Our women can no longer go murdered and missing. Our girls can no longer go murdered and missing. Neither can our men or our boys. This is Canada's responsibility to Indigenous peoples, period.
As today's vigil wraps up, many here say they'll be looking for a commitment from each of the party leaders before they cast their ballot. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Today in Val-d'Or, a special event was held to commemorate the Indigenous women who came forward to denounce the abuse they suffered at the hands of the Quebec Provincial Police. Sophie Claude Miller is there to tell us what happened.
We are today in Val-d'Or on October 4th because it's the National Day for the Vigil for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Today, here at the Kiwanis site, there was the inauguration of this sculpture behind me. It represents the Indigenous women that were murdered and missing. And also, it's to honor the courage of the women that came forward and declared the abuse that they faced with SQ, the police force here in the city of Val-d'Or. Part of them were here and part of this healing ceremony, and also were the parents of Cindy Rupertas that has been missing, and that was sort of the instigator of this initiative. You can see her silhouette right here on the sculpture, and throughout that ceremony, everybody was given a red ribbon, and they were all invited by the elder Oscar Kistabish to attach them on the tree while thinking of a missing and murdered Indigenous woman that could be part of their family or their community. Sophie Claude Miller, APTN National News, Val-d'Or, Quebec.
Several other vigils were held across the country, similar to the one in Ottawa, honoring and raising awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirits. In Winnipeg, dozens gathered at Manitoba's Legislative Building for a pipe ceremony and feast. It was the third annual event held at the legislature. October 4th is recognized provincially as the official day for honoring MMIWG. NDP MLA Bernadette Smith's family shared memories of her sister, Claudette Osborne, who went missing in 2008.
Together we can stop this. You know, we're stronger together, and we need to start uplifting and supporting our families that are going through this. You know, I say this all the time, that don't wait till it happens to you to get involved, because never did our family ever think that, you know, this would happen to our sister, or that we would be partaking and leading stuff like this.
In Whitehorse, people gathered for a silent walk, prayer, and ceremony. The Yukon Aboriginal Women's Council organized the annual Sisters in Spirit event. There are currently 41 missing Indigenous women in the Yukon.
I'm walking today for my grandmother. This is my grandmother, May Stewart, who was raped and murdered in 1972 in Upper Liard. And it's still unsolved today. She left behind 9 children who had to grow up without a mother. And I grew up without a grandmother. Nobody deserves to die the way my grandmother did. Nobody. I don't want to see this happen again.
And in northern Alberta, the Sisters in Spirit Vigil was held in the small town of Fairview for the first time. Dozens gathered to honor the women missing or murdered in the Peace River region and to bring awareness to the missing Shaylin McAllister. McAllister has been missing from Fairview since early July 2019. Family and friends say they're desperate to locate her and bring her back to her children.
I just want my baby back home so she can be with her babies. It's, you know, they're only 3 years old and 2 years old, right? Soon they're going to forget what their mama looks like.
Vigils or not, RCMP and BC have issued an alert for 2 missing sisters from Surrey, British Columbia. What is even more alarming about this case is their age. Here's Tina House with more.
64th Avenue in Surrey is a busy road with lots of commuters going through here every day. This bus stop just behind me here is the last place that 10-year-old Shantae Joseph and 13-year-old Nikita Joseph were last seen at 8 a.m. on October the 3rd. Constable Richard Wright says the RCMP has received several tips and they are following up on all of them.
They're First Nations youth, and they were last seen about 8 a.m. yesterday morning on October 3rd at about 64th and 121st Street. And we are concerned for their safety, and we are working with the mother, and we're currently conducting an investigation to try and run down their exact location.
Their mother, Tanya, says she misses her girls and hopes they come home soon.
I love them dearly, and but no matter what, we can work anything out. Like, I'm not mad. Like, everything can be water under the bridge. We can start new. It's scary out there. People are missing. Like, I wouldn't, like, I panic. I go in panic. I calm down, and I go into panic again. Because I'm out of control, and I don't know if they're safe. Like, even just a phone call.
Both girls are 5'2" with a slim build and long dark hair. 10-year-old Shante was last seen wearing a black sweater, black track pants, and black and white sneakers. 13-year-old Nikita was seen wearing a gray hoodie and blue jeans. If you have any information as to the whereabouts of the Joseph sisters, you're asked to call your local RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Tina House, APTN National News, Surrey.
And still on MMIW, Winnipeg police have made an arrest in the killing of 28-year-old Norma Andrews. Andrews' body was found in the city last month. Police have charged 20-year-old Jessie Gamblin with second-degree murder. The mother of 3 was found dead inside a rooming house in Winnipeg's West End. Police released little about her cause of death, but said she suffered upper body injuries. They believe the two had little interaction with each other before Andrews was killed. Previously, families said Andrews was scared about her living situation.
Vulnerabilities of particular individuals don't just make their life more difficult. They're vulnerable in the sense that they are more at risk of violence and ultimately, in this case, homicide. And that's something that affects all of us in this society. I'm happy to say that we've made an arrest, but it pains me to know that this is another case where an Indigenous woman was murdered.
We need to take a quick break, but there's more news ahead. And first, here's tomorrow's weather forecast.
I'm Kent Driscoll, here in Pond Inlet, Nunavut. This community of 1,700 people on the northern tip of Baffin Island bills itself as the jewel of the Arctic. One look around will tell you why. With the Northwest Passage opening due to warmer weather, this is becoming a more common scene. Cruise ships. This year alone, 3,600 visitors on 18 different ships came ashore. What does that mean for the Inuit who live here? That's coming soon on APTN National News.
To the East Coast. We've got 14 and lots of sun in Fredericton, 13 mainly sunny in Halifax. Sunshine for Happy Valley Goose Bay and 10 degrees. Kuujjuaq is a mix of sun and cloud and 7. Montreal sunny and 13, Seattle 10 and sunshine. 13 and sunny for North Bay and Ottawa, 14 and sunshine for Sault Ste. Marie. 11 and rain for Thunder Bay, Kapuskasing and Timmins, 13 and sunny. 11 and sunshine for Puckatawagan, God's Lake, Thompson, Norway House, cloudy and 9. 10 and cloudy for Winnipeg, 13 and rain for Dauphin and Brandon. 12 and sunny for Swift Current, 13 and rain for Estevan, Yorkton and Saskatoon. 10 and rainy up in Stony Rapids, 12 and rain for La Ronge. Welcome back. British Columbia's forestry industry is struggling with mill closures and reductions, and that's hurting a lot of people who rely on forestry for a living. This week, a forestry forum was held in northern BC to find solutions for the future. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
This year, over 4,000 forestry workers have lost their jobs, according to the British Columbia Minister of Forest. 85% of First Nations in BC have signed forest consultation and revenue sharing agreements, so the downturn is also affecting communities. That's why a Rethinking Forestry Forum was held in Terrace, BC. Roger Curie, president of Skeena Sawmill, was pleased to see industry focus their energy to find solutions to improve for forestry.
When I see a group of people like this, there is an enormous amount of experience in this area of people in the forest industry. It's common to have people that have worked in this for 30 plus years, who've tried a lot of things, who've seen these problems and wrestled with them.
Kiri says that one reason for the drop in forestry is in the northern terrain itself. Building roads through coastal mountains and tree growth is slower than southern regions.
The value of the fiber here is on average lower than it is in the southern parts of the province, and the logging costs are high. So those are the historic issues in forestry in this area.
The forum was arranged by Skeena MLA Alice Ross after residents shared job concerns with mill closures around the province.
This is really bad what's happening in BC. 89 mills either closed or curtailed. I don't want to see that. There's got to be a long-term solution to this.
Another big problem is high stumpage fees, which are what the industry pays government to harvest timber on Crown lands. These fees make it harder to be competitive in the market. An idea shared here was stumpage fees on average over multiple permits rather than each permit having its own fee. The industry is looking for new markets. Terrace resident Chayo Noello has been trying to reach a new deal to sell timber in Africa. He put together a plan that was approved by federal and provincial governments.
In the last 2 years, say the year before, I traveled to Africa, traveled to Ethiopia, to Sudan, and I look around and I saw the opportunity in those countries as a new market for Canadian wood product.
In Ethiopia, he discussed with a government official the benefits of building homes with Canadian lumber.
And my meeting was very good with him. And then he said, okay, leave the papers with us and go into the community, look for the construction companies and sell your ideas to them, that building with wood and wood housing are the best.
Ross and other MLAs are looking at how other wood-producing countries, like Sweden, have built a sustainable, profitable forest industry.
Are we at year one of BC having a 30-year plan for forestry? I'm hoping that we can get to that conversation and make it more sustainable.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Terrace, British Columbia.
Diabetes educators and researchers met this week to share knowledge on what's new in their field, from medicine to research, but they're looking for new perspectives. Here's Jolene Banning again.
The Diabetes Canada Conference in Winnipeg is an opportunity for networking and to learn the latest on research and medications to improve client care. But not all educators share the same perspective of addressing diabetes with a Western biomedical strategy. Dr. Monica Sinclair is looking at the bigger picture of health.
Because you're not eating right and because you're not exercising, you're going to get type 2 diabetes. And so it comes from that perspective, and it comes from the perspective you have diabetes, and here are some products you can use to help you with it, rather than saying, like, is there a way that we can actually prevent diabetes? And if we can prevent it, how do we do that?
Dr. Sinclair and her research partner, Annette Schultz, needed to hear other perspectives, in particular, Indigenous knowledge keepers, so they planned a gathering in conjunction with the national conference. They looked at diabetes from Indigenous worldviews. Schultz, a professor in the College of Nursing at the University of Manitoba, asked the knowledge keepers about their diabetes research, what Indigenous people with diabetes are experiencing, and what they could do to make their work better.
What I was really struck by was, similar to other fields in healthcare, how Indigenous knowledge and wellness practices are missing.
Knowledge keeper Mary Wilson was born and raised in Winnipeg and is now 6 years insulin-free. It took remembering and caring for her roots to kick the need for Western medications.
If we don't treat the earth with respect and we don't balance ourselves with that, then we're going to be out of balance and diabetes is going to rise. Because of the colonization piece, because we've had so much oppression, we don't have the food that is healthy for the body.
For research gathered, Schultz and Sinclair plan to hold a symposium for a larger audience to allow for open dialogue and to build bridges. I'm Jolene Banning for APTN National News in Winnipeg.
Time for us to take another quick break, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. Off to northern Alberta. We've got 13 in rain in Grand Prairie and Peace River, Fort Chips 10 in rain. 12 in rain for Edmonton and Red Deer, 12 and mostly sunny for Lethbridge and Calgary, 15 in rain for Tofino, 13 in rain for Quesnel, 12 in rain for Fort Nelson. Smithers is 11 and raining. Whitehorse, mix of sun and cloud, 9 degrees, 4 and snow for Dawson City, 8 and snow, 8 and rain for Norman Wells, 11 and sunny for Fort Simpson. Tuck is snowing and 4 degrees, so is Paulatuck. -6 and mostly sunny for Cambridge Bay, 6 and cloud in Whale Cove. Grey Havens -8 and sunny, Gluluck -2 and sunshine, Cape Dorset snow and 1 degrees. Welcome back. A new play by Anishinaabe playwright Ian Ross is having its world premiere on stage in Winnipeg. Jolene Banning caught up with Ross and brings us this story.
Oh, listen, once there were these 2 warriors and they were going to a Tupperware party.
Stop! I heard that one before. Put this on!
It looks like it's for parties.
Definitely not a party.
The play is called The Third Color, and it uses humor to ask the questions about identity and the world we live in. Can Indigenous people truly achieve truth and reconciliation? Award-winning Anishinaabe playwright Ian Ross is often asked why he uses humor to tackle these heavy topics.
And I said, because that's the thing that's kept us sane as Indigenous people. And it's also what we've always inherently known. Like, we know what's important.
For Ross, who was the first Indigenous person to win a Governor General's Award for English drama, it's important to see Indigenous worldviews reflected on stage to show Indigenous lives have meaning and value. For non-Indigenous people, it's a chance to gain a better understanding of who Indigenous people are and all they have lived through and continue to live through. Like systemic racism, discrimination, and inequalities. The Third Color asks the viewer, which way do we move forward?
It raises the question of, as Indigenous people, should we continue to buy into the idea of Canada and working within that system, trying to make it better, or do we go our own way? And I see both happening right now.
Equally important to sharing your story is having the space to tell it. This past summer, Winnipeg's Prairie Theatre Exchange made the commitment to take an honest look at their role in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. The theatre answered that with a guarantee of showing 1 Indigenous playwright per year. Actress Tracy Nipanak from Peguis First Nation believes theatre has the power to change lives.
This was a very sacred place. And I think it's a healing place. So you come here and you open your heart and you feel this energy that is like gentle and open, and I think you're affected by that on a very personal level, and so art heals. These words heal.
The Third Color by Anishinaabe playwright Ian Ross is on stage now at the Prairie Theatre Exchange. It runs now until October 20th. For APTN National News, I'm Jolene Banning in Winnipeg.
That's your news for this Friday. You can always find more on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for your APTN News Weekend.